So this is my reflection for Introduction to Higher Education, and the reason I did a video is because I feel like this best represents me. I feel like you can't get everything into a paper as you can while just talking about it. So there are a couple questions I'm going to answer about our Intro to Higher Ed class to kind of reflect on the quarter and reflect on our letter writing project. So the first question was, what were your initial learning goals for this course? What did you see as your strengths and challenges coming into this course? So my initial learning goals for this course were to just learn more about higher ed. I had been on the student side of it, being in residence life, but I felt like I hadn't learned enough on the student side of it that I could have on the supervisor or on the job side of things. So I decided that I was hoping that this course would give me a little more insight into higher education and give me a little more detail as to what higher education looks like. So that way I could be more prepared in the future for a future job. Um, so I could feel more prepared. Some of my strengths coming into this course is I knew a little bit about higher education, working on the student side of things in residence life. As an RA and RC, I had also worked as a writing tutor, so I did a lot of clubs when I was in college, so I knew a lot about the student activity side of things and about residence life and about writing centers and tutoring centers. I even knew some about disability services. So I knew that those were some of my strengths was I knew about some of the things that happen in a college. Some of my challenges coming into this course were I just I felt like I didn't know enough. I wanted to just learn more, and I felt like some of my challenges were that I wasn't as prepared as I thought I would be. When you work on the student side of things and you go right in, you're like, oh, guess what? I know some things, but you don't know everything, and I feel like sometimes that can get the better of us is that we think we know everything when truly we don't. So that was one of the challenges I saw coming into this course. Another challenge was I had just gotten out of an education program in which I was learning about little kids. I was learning about K through 4 mainly. I had learned about some special education with K through 12. So that gave me a look into the disability services side of things with higher education, as well as having some disability services myself. Um, but transforming from little kids into essentially bigger kids was a huge challenge for me because you think in terms of what do they need academically versus what do these students need socially. So that was one of the challenges coming into this course. So what were some of the important milestones in the process of writing your letter? How did you choose the topic in the audience? And what research was important to how you wrote and rewrote your letter? So little bit of background on my letter. I wrote to the president of my former alma mater, Wesley College, President Clark, because I felt like there was a lot of issues going on at Wesley right now, and I wanted to address one of those issues, which is retention. Working in residence life, I had seen students come and go in waves. It was insane. I was a resident coordinator for 2 years, and one of the years I was a resident coordinator in a freshman dorm. I started off by having 30 plus residents on my floor, and by the time the next semester came around, I had 8 students on my floor. And I think, if I remember correctly, my residence hall pretty much dropped in half by the time the next quarter came around, or the next semester came around. Sorry, thinking in the quarter system. So I really wanted to address that issue, especially with first year retention and making sure that the first years feel that they're comfortable and safe on campus and making sure that they know the resources and making sure that they're just excelling versus wanting to drop out or not coming back due to academic probation or students who weren't allowed to come back because their GPA was so low. So that was so important to address for me. When we first started talking about this paper, I had no clue what I was going to write about. So by the time we started discussing ideas in class and we had somebody come in and talk to us, I was like, retention is a big issue. I want to talk about that. And when thinking about Wesley and its retention issues, I really wanted to just focus on that. I wanted to go forward with that. I wanted to be a big part of my former institution, and I do not want to see it die out, which unfortunately it might. So, and I ended up looking up a lot of different resources for this. I looked up pretty much everything that goes along with retention. I looked at graduation rates. I found an article from my school by one of the science professors who talked about Wesley's STEM program and how it can help thrive. So I really liked that article and I loved reading it. And I loved getting some more information about Wesley from it. I looked up about first year programs, orientation, um, early alert systems, living learning communities, and I really used those sources. I looked at non-cognitive attributes and learned about some of the things that make students not want to come back, whether it be grades, whether it be their previous SAT scores kind of was a sign for them that they wouldn't do well, which I thought those were some interesting reads, was looking at the pre-college factors that made students drop out, transfer, whatever it was. And some of the big things that I found were finances and not having the support system. So learning about those things, it helped me realize, okay, so this is what Wesley has, this is what Wesley needs. And I kind of threw that together, especially when it came to the first year stuff. Being with freshmen, I knew about a lot of the systems, especially being a writing tutor and a resident coordinator. So I was able to compare the two and say, all right, this is where Wesley's strengths are. You have these programs, but they're not where they could be. You get what I'm saying? Wesley has good programs. They have what they need. But there's a way to strengthen those programs to make it more accessible for first years and make sure that these first years are able to retain at school. So looking at those, I really dug deep into my paper. I talked about the issues I had faced on campus, and I related it back to the research and said, these are the things we can fix, but there are things that we cannot control, like the students' non-cognitive. I've really used that article to my benefit to show I understand that Wesley has a retention issue, and these are some things we can use to fix it. But there's still going to be those select few students that have those non-cognitive attributes, whether it be finances or they didn't feel mentally prepared enough for college, or the academics were too rigorous for them. So I kind of combined all that together to show this is what Wesley can do. And I thought it would be super helpful. So that was me writing my paper, and I loved writing about it because it helped me really connect. If I had written to somebody who I didn't know or written about something I wasn't passionate about, the paper probably would have not come out as good. I got compliments from my fellow group mates when we were going over the project saying, you are so passionate and you want to help out your undergrad, and that's fantastic that you put so much passion into this paper. And I think that's what makes the paper what it is and the letter what it is the fact that I have so much passion for this issue. I think retention is a huge issue, not just at Wesley, but at other schools. And if I can help keep students, whether it is through residence programs or whether it's through early alert systems or orientation, I would like to do it, because all students should have the right to go to college. They shouldn't have to feel like they have to drop out or their grades are suffering too much from it that they can't stay. So what have you learned in this course/process? I have learned so much. I have realized how much the state government had control of higher education and how little the state governments had of higher education. I thought that it was the opposite. I thought federal government had a lot of control over higher education. So I thought that that was really interesting learning in this course. And I feel like I just have a much better grasp on higher education now. I feel like I have a grasp on a lot of the issues that are facing higher education, a lot of the strengths that higher education has, and just learning about what we can do in higher education to make it more accessible, more make sure that the students have more support, and just making sure that we are able to challenge these issues and face them head on. What knowledge or skills obtained during this course will you apply to your future coursework career life? So in this course, we have learned pretty much back from the beginning of higher education when it started all the way up to now. And I feel like knowing the history of higher education helps me as an educator, knowing what the past looks like to be able to help with the future. Another thing I've learned is I've learned more about myself as an educator. I learned a lot about myself when I was going through my elementary and special education program, but that was for elementary and special education becoming a teacher. I didn't know much about myself besides the fact that I wanted to go into higher education and I wanted to work in residence life. And I wanted that to be my end goal, was to work in residence life. So learning more about myself, learning more about my values, my beliefs, um, how I think students should be supported, and how much the higher education system needs more people like us. Higher education needs people who want to be able to help and support students get through 2 to 4 years of their life and make sure that they graduate. Whether it is in those 4 years or not, making sure that those students graduate. I had a fellow education major who is in his 7th year now and he's finally graduating. So making sure we have that support to make sure that these students are able to graduate, whether they want it to be in 4 years or whether they want it to be in 7 years. I had fellow education majors who decided to drop out of educational studies because they were not passing their praxises. And if they had had more support from people outside telling them, hey, it's okay, maybe you stay an extra year, then maybe they would have become the teachers that they wanted to be. And maybe they decided that they really didn't want to be teachers, which is understandable. And they're following a different career path. But in the end, we want to be able to support those students, whether they decide that this school is not for them. It's understandable. Not every school is for everybody. I don't think I would have survived at a school like DU when I first started. I felt like Wesley was the perfect school for me because it was so small and so intricate and so personal. I had gone to a school like DU that